BreakTheBusiness.com. We are happy to welcome Diane Gentile on to Break the Business. Hi, Diane.
Hello, how are you?
See, nothing is more entertaining to me, Zach, than the guest who listened to our nonsense right before the interview and comes in with the nervous, what the hell did I do to get on this show laughter.
But no, I'm laughing because your stamp story is amazing. Because I recently had to mail CDs out to like 55 or 65 radio stations, and I show up at the post office at like 4:35 because I'm always like really late, and I've got all these packages, right, of 65 CDs with me, and I walk in and I'm like, okay, I'd like to mail these. You know, how much are they? And she says, well, you can't mail them like that. And I was like, what do you mean I can't mail them? They were actually in packages, like regular CD packages with the bubble
like in the
wrap
jewel cases, yeah.
and everything, like, you know, and no, not even jewel cases. They were cardboard inside, like cardboard cases, right inside of a regular package with bubble wrap inside. And she said, oh, well, you have to put them in individual envelopes, and they're going to cost you $5.50 a CD.
Whoa. No bueno.
Like, well, I was like, no. Something is really wrong here. Anyway, it took me 3 days to get those stamps mailed. And it cost me $1.46 per stamp. I mean,
oh my gosh. Boy, that postal service, what a racket, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Diane, I have so many topics I want to cover with you for, based on like just the laundry list of cool things on your resume. Chief among which is when you managed the Bowery Electric, a very, very cool venue. I loved it when I was in that city. And it seems to me like it's one of those venues that just the people that have walked in there and have played it or have just frequented it, it's had to have given you your fair share of pretty crazy stories. Can you give us your coolest story from your time managing Bowery Electric?
To be really honest with you, that when you're running a business like that and you're the general manager and you're in charge of all the booking, you don't even have time to enjoy yourself or to enjoy those really funny moments that actually happen. I have no funny moments at all from working at the Bowery Electric, wow. But I definitely had a lot of fun working there. I mean, when you have artists, like Lenny Kaye, for example, from the Patti Smith Band, or Richard Lloyd from television, those types of artists who have been there and have done it and seen it all, when they come into a venue, they're just the most wonderful people to have to work with. And they don't care. They'll go to the bar and they'll have a drink, and it doesn't matter if they're drinking 3 hours before the show, and they're just so easy, but I wouldn't say that it's full of really fun, exciting, like not fun stories. It's just really an exciting place to be.
Well, that's how you know she was actually good at her job, Zach.
Yes, and I was.
She ran a tight ship. She wasn't getting involved in the shenanigans, and so that place was running like a Swiss watch while she was there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So in your time, like from you think back to those early days of managing Bowery Electric, think about how much has live music changed and the experience of live music changed for musicians. Like, what would you say is the biggest difference between the live music experience for musicians back then versus today?
I think that artists really appreciate playing live much more today than they might have 10 years ago. I think that artists understand now that the experience of playing their music to fans is such an important communal experience. And I don't know if I think maybe before COVID, maybe they might have taken it for granted. I don't really know. I can't speak for other artists, but I can speak for the ones that I see that have come in since COVID, that they really are happy to be back on stage. They're so happy to be there. I mean, it's almost like, the hell with the drink tickets. We don't care. We're just happy to be here in the venue.
Well, That's an interesting juxtaposition to me, because on one hand, I have heard that from others in addition to you about how we're all happy to be back on stage again post COVID. It's, the performers miss that community and, miss that experience and miss the crowds and just everything that comes with that. But we've also talked a lot about on this show about how the economics of live performing have gotten tougher for musicians, particularly post-pandemic, as more and more large entertainment companies are kind of buying up the mid-size and larger venues. And as, transportation costs are higher, as inflation is higher, it can be a lot harder for a band to go on tour and yield anything that, seems like a reasonable profit. And has that been your experience? And how do you sort of balance the first thing that you said about how we're all happy to be back touring with this second idea that, like, it's harder to make ends meet while going on tour?
Well, it's harder to make ends meet, not only for the artists, but also for the venues.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I think that people's habits have changed greatly since COVID. A lot of people realize that they don't necessarily always have to go out to have such a great time, that they learned how to entertain themselves at home. So, people come out. Fewer people were coming out immediately after COVID. Now we're starting to get back again to more people coming out. But I just think that habits have changed. People want to come out to shows earlier. They don't necessarily want to see a band at 11 o'clock at night. Prior to COVID, if somebody offered me a show at midnight, I mean, I would probably still take it myself. I would take a song at midnight, but a show at midnight, but I wouldn't necessarily be able to bring as many people that late as I right now as I could before. And then financially, of course, you do door deals, and you do for local bands, you do door deals. And then for the touring bands, you do somewhat of guarantees. But I think that most people are understanding that it's we can only really pay what we make. And so there are always, and I think this goes back to before COVID and just regular in the business. Like there are venues that will take big budgets and they'll throw a lot of money to people, and they'll say,
Mhm.
"Oh, we have all this money," and they'll cover the budgets. But at the end of the day, those venues won't stay alive very long. They'll be hot and happening for a moment, and then they'll disappear. I think any smart business, is going to understand how to spend their money and how to find a way to work it out. I mean, there is no set logic, and it's always a changing landscape. And the landscape changes every 6 months. It changes every year. And the rules and the regulations change every 6 months and every year. And how you go about doing booking changes every 6 months. And how you go about playing as an artist around town changes.
It is heartbreaking to see what's happening to the smaller and mid-sized venues. And one of our viewers actually just wrote an important comment that I think it is an important point. I referred to what the current state we are in as post-COVID, when what I should have said was post-lockdown. Certainly COVID's still very much a thing, and looking at some of the epidemiological statistics lately might be making a little bit of a comeback. But right, the idea is, certainly COVID's still around, but post-lockdown and people getting back to performing, the implications of that. While we were talking, Zach, I saw a great deal of nodding on your part with a lot of what Diane was saying there. Are you sort of seeing a similar perspective where, since you're, now that you've gotten back out on the road and back out performing, Zach, are you sort of happy that you're able to get in front of those crowds again, but also apprehensive at the idea that the finances of touring have gotten tougher than they used to be?
Absolutely. I share that. When Diane said, like, artists took it for granted, I used to sometimes be like, I don't want to play tonight and now every time I'm like, oh, I got a gig, let's go do this. And so I think we've all had a little bit of a wake-up call. One thing that is really hard too, though, is when my band is working with venues. I mean, we have very frank conversations because we have good relationships with people. They're like, look, we can't pay you what we used to. It's just, it ain't that world. And I wish more people listen to Diane. Start your shows earlier. Shows need to be going off earlier because pulling later crowds harder and harder. And if somebody out on the East Coast is saying that, you know that's true just about everywhere else because the East Coast runs a
Yeah.
little bit later usually. Am I
It's
right,
just-
Diane? Am I crazy?
Oh yeah, totally. Actually, I have a question. What bands are you playing?
I'm in Dear Marcia.
Okay. DEAR or DEER?
DEAR, just like the
Okay.
letter.
Dear Marsha. Okay.
Yeah, you put a postage stamp on it. You know,
Well,
For 42 cents.
you're right about starting early, but the problem is that we really need to go early to late in order to be able to make the numbers.
True.
So with that said, you need bands that are going to play late also, and you need an audience that's going to come out late. So it's just it's never, there's nothing that's ever the same when it comes to booking a venue. It changes all the time.
Do you have any advice for for musicians that are touring, creators that are touring and playing live to kind of better adapt to the way things are now? Is there anything that they can do, perhaps with venue owners in the way that they talk and relate to them to kind of strengthen their position in this world?
I don't think it's really the artists with the venues that seems to be the issues. I think that artists just need to understand that venues are a business. And they don't always understand that. They think it's like, oh, I get a gig at this place and I'm getting to play this place and it's super, it's super cool. But we wouldn't be in that place if we can't make money and if we can't get people into the door. So I think that artists taking a more aggressive approach in trying to show the venue that they're able to sell advance tickets is really important. And this comes from somebody who has been there and struggles sometimes, like if I went to play another city, I mean, maybe 10 people would come out, or 20 people or 50 people, but I have to make sure that when I'm going to another city, that I do everything possible as an artist to help that venue to sell that show. It's part, unfortunately, it's part of my responsibility as an independent artist. If you're an artist and you have a large management company that's helping you, or you have, booking people, you have publicists, that big support network, those people can help you also. But at the end of the day, the artist is the one that has the text list. I have a list of contacts in my phone. And at the end of the day, I build that text list up. And if I'm going into Chicago, it's my responsibility to make sure that I send a text out to all the people that I know in Chicago and letting them know I'm coming to town. You got to come out and see me. That's the only thing that I would ask artists to really pay a little bit more attention to.
That is great advice. So when you get a gig with a venue, rather than just seeing yourself as the labor for that night and it's the venue's job to promote you, it sounds like what the artist should be perceiving it as is being a partner in that venue's success. When you are coming to town, be the person that can help that venue out, bring people to that venue, promote that venue so that, you and the venue can succeed together. I love that perspective.
Yeah. And you have to remember also that, back 20 years ago when we had bands that would come and play and the internet wasn't as, we didn't have like Instagram and all of the great modern areas of social media to be able to get to. On one hand, it's great because we can reach a lot of more people. But on the other hand, when we didn't have that, our concentration was making great flyers and making great posters and making really cool stuff, that people would get excited about, and stickers and things like that to get up on the walls and go out and poster places and put, hang posters up on lamp posts. And, venues did that kind of stuff and artists did that kind of stuff also. Now we still do posters. We still do social media. We still do the best we can, with hashtagging and all of the social media that we can and whatever kind of advertising we can. But it's a different way of promoting these days for venues, and the internet and online and social media is so flooded. Beforehand, it was just about, let's get the community of people that we have in the East Village to know that we've got this great show coming in. We have these great bills just by putting up posters and putting up flyers and cards. It was different. It was more community based.
I love that perspective, and certainly getting some of the artists today to adopt some of those techniques to help venues so that everyone can succeed together makes a lot of sense. I do want to talk about your album a little bit that's coming out, The Bad and the Beautiful. I know. And particularly I want to talk about sort of your process for songwriting, which I imagine was brought to bear in creating this album. Zach, you're going to love this. All right. I read this from Diane's bio in terms of how she writes songs, because I've never heard it quite a songwriter's process expressed quite like this before, and it definitely warrants follow-ups. This is from her bio. Quote, Diane sees her songs in her head before she hears them. They come to her as emotionally evocative scenes that she's then soundtracks. Can you walk us through that? That sounds amazing. You're playing movies in your head, and then you are scoring them, and then those songs become the songs of your album. Do I have this about right?
Yeah, you do, unfortunately.
That sounds amazing. There's nothing
I'm gonna do that for
unfortunate
my next
about-
record.
That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. That is so much cooler than, I write the music and then I write the lyrics. No,
I got
you're
a journal.
like you're Hans Zimmer in your head. That's so much cooler.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Like I wake, whatever. I wake up or I'm walking, I go for a run, down to the park, and or whatever it might be. Sometimes I just get like a scene in my head, like a scene. It is not me, it's people, doing something or having a situation or a feeling or whatever, and it's usually influenced by something from the past that I might have recently experienced, like with Walk With Me, which is a song on the record that's the current single, that is a duet with Alejandro Escovedo. I had been on tour, and Alejandro had invited me to stop by his house to have a cup of coffee in Austin, Texas. And I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And we went there, and I was so honored to be at this guy's house. But the experience of pulling up in his driveway and going down this driveway, if you saw this driveway is about 2 miles long. It's completely white sand, and around the driveway, which is very windy, there are these very pale, like cyan colored trees, along the pathway. And I was just, it was mesmerizing to me. And then, so of course, when we got to his house, I said, can we go for a walk? Like, can we walk down the driveway? I just want to walk down the driveway. I mean, we drove down the driveway, but I want to walk that driveway. And we just went outside and we went for a long walk from his house all the way down the driveway and all the way back again. And it was an immensely calming experience for me, and visually really beautiful. And so when I sat down to write Walk With Me, I wasn't really thinking like, I'm going to sit down and write. Like, I didn't really know what was happening. I just kind of saw his driveway in my head. Like 9 months later, this happened, a year later, just out of the blue. I was just sitting down and I was thinking about his driveway, and I was like, I think I want to talk about something. And I just started to write the lyrics and play the music.
That sounds like an amazing way to write a song.
That's pretty cool.
And, because you bring in the perspectives of the world around you. And, by sort of seeing a movie in your head, like it sort of inherently creates a storytelling aspect to your music, which is going to make that music so rich and exciting. I'm already seeing Zach thinking about, I got to write my next song this way. This is going to be cool.
It's just really funny. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, I was gonna say, so do your records? Because I listened to your music, but I didn't listen to it through this lens. Do your albums almost feel like wide-spanning concept albums then, or are they each song insular in their own story?
Is each song its own movie, or is it like one big movie?
Each song is its own movie, and then I just put the album together. Like the Motorcycle, which is not on this record, but that was on my first record. Like,
Cool song.
Somebody had given me a brand new cool Gibson Melody Maker guitar. I had just gotten it as a birthday gift, and it was
Whoa.
it was really special.
That's
It was
dope.
really special. It's a vintage Melody. It's really good.
Like the Joan
And
Jett guitar?
yeah, it is.
Oh.
It is. It is. It's just such a cool guitar. And I brought it home. I was so excited. I brought it home. I sat in my little living room area where I play my music, and I plugged it in, and I was just like, wow, this guitar is great. And suddenly, as I had the guitar in my hand, I saw a movie in my head of a girl getting on the back of a motorcycle, driving upstate New York to like Monticello. And the story just unfolded, but it started with that vision. It was just a vision that I had for a moment. And that's where the song came from. And I wrote the whole song in like 2 minutes.
I love this. So the album, I have here in my notes that it's slated for a September release. Is that still about right?
Yeah, it is. It's September 15th. I'm doing a big record release party on August 30th with Alejandro Escovedo is coming up to sing on the song with me.
Yes.
Lenny Kaye is a friend of mine, so he's going to come and special guest appear. I'm really excited. It's going to be a good night.
That's fantastic. You can find out more about our guest's work by going to DianeGentile.com. Diane, this is so cool. I've loved your perspective on touring. I loved hearing about your songwriting process. I mean, it's got to be one of the coolest ways to write songs that I've heard. I think next time an artist comes to me with writer's block, I'm going to give them your method. Before we let you go, we got one last question for you.
Okay.
Do you have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
Oh, I wish I did. I really, honestly, truly wish I did. What I do is I work really hard. That is the first thing. I mean, there are days where I will work from 10 o'clock in the morning until 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. You have to make a lot of friends. You have to be able to love other people. I mean, I don't know if this is right for everybody. I mean, I don't like to give advice to people because I think that everybody's journey is their own journey is kind of how I believe in things. So I would never tell anybody, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. But I would say for me that I work really hard. I listen to other people's music as much as I can. There aren't a lot of hours in a day for me to listen to the amount of music that I'd like to listen to, but I do listen to other people's music, whether it's somebody who is a really big artist who just puts something out, or whether it's an upcoming artist who sends me a song. I will always listen to it. I don't always get back to them and say, oh, I love this. Sometimes I don't love everything that I hear, but I do listen to music. I try very hard to be polite to people in the music business, to understand that everybody is working really hard out there, and it's not an easy business. If you're planning on getting rich playing music, I have a question for you.
That's not how this works.
I don't believe, okay, I still do not believe this. I do not believe that people that have these huge amounts of Instagram followers and huge amounts of TikTok followers and huge amounts of all of these followers online that are claiming that they're making $3 million and $4 million and $2 million off of their music because of that. I don't believe that that's really true.
Well, I have 243 TikTok followers and I only make $1 million. So, just to give you some.
Oh, you do?
That's right. Obviously we want to tamp down people's expectations because like 3 million, 4 million, that's ridiculous. Producer Lauren being like, nope. He can't even afford one postage stamp with what he makes on TikTok.
He doesn't even know how much a postage stamp
that's
is.
Right.
Ryan, I have a stat on that actually queued up.
Stat?
Yeah,
okay.
So not specific to TikTok, but last year there was just over 10,000 artists in the world who pulled in more than $10,000, or excuse me, more than $100,000 in royalties from streaming. That accounts to 0.11% of artists on streaming services made more than $100,000. So we're talking about a tiny, tiny number. So I think Diane's probably right on target there.
Yeah, because I see, like, I read a lot of these things, and I read a lot of stuff that comes in about Spotify, and there are all of these artists who are explaining, oh, well, I made $1 million here, and I did $600,000 here, and I'm just thinking, it's just part of their. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it's part of their way to make themselves look bigger to the world. Because they're not really being transparent in what is actually happening. And I think that by saying that they make $1 million, maybe people are more interested in what it is that they have.
Are you saying that people are lying about themselves on the internet? Come on. Not on the internet. No, it's important perspective, and look, really appreciate your insight here, Diane. This has been fantastic. My thanks to you. Our thanks to Zach Sloan and producer Lauren and Orson Welles for joining us on Break the Business. Really appreciate all the viewers and listeners checking us out as well. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.